What do you think when you hear the words diversity and inclusion? I'm guessing it's stock photos of smiling people at work, people of every race and gender in perfect ratio, boring training days with check-the-box exercises that don't move the needle, and woke activists going too far and making a fuss over nothing. Hi, my name is Ruchika Tulshyan. I'm a writer, a keynote speaker, and the author of Inclusion on Purpose. And I'm here to tell you that you have probably got a lot of things about diversity and inclusion wrong. Here are 5 of them. Number 1, meritocracy is real. You almost certainly know the word meritocracy. You almost certainly don't know that it was coined by British writer Michael Dunlop Young as a satire, a dystopian way to look at the world. Despite this, we still heavily subscribe to the idea that success is linked to how hard we work. The reality is that a number of impediments in society impact the opportunities a person has to get ahead, especially based on their identities. For people of color, especially women of color, this false belief in so much of our society and workplaces today can be really damaging because others believe that if we aren't getting ahead, we're not trying hard enough, when in actual fact, bias is rampant and we all need to do our part in stepping up to this myth. Want some evidence? Well, research by McKinsey in 2021 shows white men have 62% of senior leadership roles in corporate America, and white women hold 20% of these roles. For women of color, that's just 4%. So yes, the idea that your success in life is only proportional to how hard you work is wrong. The most recent manifestation of this idea has been the belief that a college education is the road to success. Except in the United States, studies show race, not education, is the biggest predictor of financial security. In fact, on average, Black households in the US headed by a college graduate have less net worth than white households headed by someone with a high school education or less. So, how do you fix this? Well, it has nothing to do with leaning in, if that's what you're thinking. Number 2, lean in. If women aren't getting ahead, they need to try harder. When women, specifically white women, weren't getting glamour work opportunities to progress, the overarching narrative was that women weren't asking for them or even actively rejecting opportunities to progress due to their own imposter syndrome. This was the message of Sheryl Sandberg's 2013 book, Lean In. Unfortunately, lean in doesn't work. In fact, Duke University researchers Grain Fitzsimmons, Aaron Kay, and Jae-yoon Kim in 2018 conducted an experiment to assess the impact on participants when they listened to the messages of Lean In. What they found was profound. These people thought it was their responsibility to fix structural inequality. Participants who didn't listen to these messages were more open to the fact that there were structural barriers causing inequality. The researchers concluded that the book's narrative could cause victim blaming, where individual women were blamed for not being able to progress at work, not the structural barriers that prevented them from advancing. Like the overrepresentation of men in leadership roles, facing sexism and bias, being underpaid compared with male counterparts, facing a motherhood penalty compared with the fatherhood bonus their male peers enjoy. I could go on. For women of color who navigate tropes that they're angry, hysterical, or submissive, there's often no way to lean in and be rewarded. What does work? Dismantling structural bias. But first, we have to get rid of the idea that 3. Inclusion is a zero-sum game. For far too long, we've been told that diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, is a zero-sum game. The idea that if people who've historically been left out start to progress, that means less progress for me. It's like cake. Less for me means more for you. Except that's totally wrong. When it comes to inclusion, a rising tide lifts all boats. Working in a diverse and inclusive environment makes us smarter, more innovative, and improves our overall well-being. Working with people who are different to us definitely challenges us, but that friction ensures we make better decisions. Inclusion isn't just the profitable or moral thing to do, although it's both. There are benefits to working closely with people who are different than you. One of my favorite studies is from 2006, where a research team led by Dr. Catherine W. Phillips conducted an experiment where groups of 3 had to share information to solve a mystery. Some groups were all white, others were racially mixed. If each member did not share the important clues with each other, they would not be able to solve the mystery. The groups with racial diversity significantly outperformed the groups with no racial diversity. As Dr. Phillips wrote in an article, being with similar others leads us to think we all hold the same information and share the same perspective. This perspective, which stopped the all-white groups from effectively processing the information, is what hinders creativity and innovation. Rather than building a taller fence, we're all better off when we seek to build a wider table. But I know what you're thinking. What if our table has a unique and special culture and certain individuals will ruin that? I thought that. Number 4, selecting for culture fit is the best way to hire or promote. Absolutely not. Hiring for culture fit is among the most widespread and exclusionary hiring practices today. When you're hiring for a fit, given that most companies in Western countries are led by white men, by default, you're hiring for sameness. Culture fit is an unspoken code that people have around what's acceptable and what's not within an organization or even in society. Rather than focusing on culture fit, organization leaders must focus on culture add to be inclusive. When teams prioritize hiring a candidate who would be a culture add rather than a culture fit, they're more likely to benefit from out-of-the-box thinking and better outcomes. Yet, the language of who is a culture fit persists, and one survey of global organizations found 84% of recruiters look for it in their selection process. Think back to the last time you talked about someone being a fit or not. The more trouble you have articulating why a candidate is not a culture fit, the more likely your judgment is biased. Number 5, I'm not a CEO or HR, so inclusion isn't my job. I hear complaints about ineffective HR departments regularly in my work. Managers moan about how HR recruiters aren't sending over more underestimated candidates. Job seekers tell me that thanks to bad HR practices, they feel like their application disappears into a black box. Company leaders tell me I should talk to HR if a company isn't measuring well on diversity and inclusion metrics. Employees tell me HR is often the biggest blocker when they're seeking insights into whether they're getting paid equally. Everyone loves to hate on HR. That's unfortunate and unfair. Over the years, I've advised a number of HR leaders on how to create more inclusive organizations, and indeed, some have demonstrated self-awareness and a growth mindset, while others get defensive and block recommendations for progress. But the reason HR doesn't do a good job of creating inclusive work environments is because it's not just their job, it's everybody's responsibility. We all have a role to play in identifying biases in action, understanding our own privilege, and where if we speak up, we can disrupt them and create an environment where our peers from all backgrounds can be welcomed. One example I think of all the time is when I sat in a team meeting and a senior leader who I'd worked with for a few months already kept mispronouncing my name. I was early in my career, and as the only non-white and non-American in the room, I felt too embarrassed to say anything. A white male colleague came up to me afterwards and said, "Gee, that was awkward how he kept mispronouncing your name." At that moment, my colleague who was at the same level as me could have corrected the leader. As someone with male and white privilege, he had less to lose than me. In future interactions, when someone in the room has politely but firmly corrected someone else on my mispronounced name, a colleague's gender pronouns, or asked a colleague who has interrupted a woman to let her finish speaking, I and others like me have felt more welcomed, and included. So while larger interventions like running company-wide pay audits to ensure people can progress equally no matter what they look like are critical, the daily interactions and culture are equally important, and we can all take responsibility and action to ensure they're more inclusive.